December 7th will, of course, be UFC 310 Pantoja versus Asakura. Now, of course, not only is it a great main event as Ryzen's champion now moves into the UFC and gets an immediate title shot, but in the undercard, you have some pretty good matchups. You have Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov 2. You have the battle of the undefeated Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Gary. And of course, in the prelims and other ones, you have Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith and Movar Evliov, is that how you pronounce it? Versus Aljamain Funkmaster Sterling. Although I would love to talk about these ones, I don't want to be too long, but I have Sterling winning close decision, and I have Dominic Reyes winning also decision against Anthony Smith. But besides that, time to talk about the heavyweights. Alexander Volkov, aka Drago, is 38-10, 24 wins by way of knockout, 4 submission wins, and 10 decisions. 2 losses by way of knockout, 3 submission losses, and 5 decision losses. Now, of course, the last time they fought, Cyril Gane won a 5-round unanimous decision win. Now, of course, much has changed since then, as he has also lost to Tom Aspinall in the first round via submission. But what are you going to do? Tom Aspinall is just Tom Aspinall. He's just that guy. He's also lost to people like Curtis Blades and Derek Lewis, some other people back in the day, but for the most part, pretty good losses. Now, of course, Volkov has one thing going for him, and that it seems like he has basically reinvented himself. He has seen better days, obviously coming off of a great win, that being Sergey Pavlovich, 3-round unanimous decision. It was not close at all. Volkov used his length to his advantage, keeping Pavlovich on the outside and capitalizing on all the mistakes Pavlovich made. But he has his work cut out for him, obviously going against the guy he lost to, being Cyril Gane, Bone Gammon. 12-2, 6 wins by way of knockout, 3 submission wins, and 3 decision. Doesn't go to the scorecards that often. 2 losses, 1 by decision and 1 by submission. Now, of course, both of his losses come very close to each other. His first one being his title shot against Francis Ngannou, where he lost a 5-round unanimous decision. But he did prove that his striking is one of the best in the division, obviously making Ngannou wrestle with Gane. And of course, he lost in the first round against John Jones in his second title shot. Now, of course, nothing much you could do about that. It's John Jones, so we don't blame you, Gane. But he has beaten people like Derek Lewis via knockout, Volkov obviously by decision, Rosenstrike via decision as well, Junior Dos Santos via TKO, and tied Tuivasa and Sergey Spivak. Now, of course, obviously, Gane has not been the most active fighter. The last time he fought was back in September of 2023, so around a year and a little bit of a layoff, all right? But Gane is known for his very nice striking, obviously beating Volkov via decision. But the difference is, Gane is still the better fighter. I still think he's a better fighter, overall the better striker, because don't get me wrong, Volkov is definitely, seeing some improvement, but he's still, relatively slow for the most part. Gane can just, out-strike him by, just sheer quickness. But for the most part, Gane is the better striker of the two, and even if they have to go to the ground, Gane has more than enough experience to really not let that lose him the round, right? But the one thing that's the elephant in the room is Gane is not active. It's been a year, and he's beating Sergey Spivak. No offense to Spivak, but it's just not the best opponent, especially coming off of a long layoff, right? It's not like, he beat the best guy in the division. Now, of course, Volkov isn't, you could say, that much better, considering people think Pavlovich kind of lost himself after the Aspinall fight. He didn't look anywhere near what he looked like beforehand, so obviously people think that he fought a worse version of Pavlovich, right? But Gane, that's the thing. It's the rust. Pretty sure it's a 3-round fight. The rust is going to bite him in the ass. I'm going to say this right now. The rust is going to bite him in the ass. He's going to lose the first round, trying to readjust himself. And screw it, he might even lose the second round if he doesn't get, right onto it. But even then, Volkov can probably make enough momentum, to beat Gane by decision. Because remember, Volkov has found new confidence, obviously beating Pavlovich and other guys. And Gane is coming off of a long layoff. So obviously, a lot of stuff is going wrong for Gane, right? But Gane could beat him again, but I just think the ring rust will be a little bit too much this time around, and he will lose decision against Volkov. I think he might have a good third round. You might think, oh my God, he's gonna stop Volkov. Nope, No, that's it. Little too late, right? But besides that, that's about it. Volkov most likely will win by decision, keeping him on the outside, really taking advantage of Gon's ring rust, or octagon rust, however you want to say it, and get himself a decision win. But now, an upcoming fight, which was supposed to be a title fight, it was supposed to be Belal Muhammad defending his welterweight title against Shavkat Rakhmonov, but it has changed to Rakhmonov or Shavkat versus Ian Gary for #1 contender. And of course, Ian Gary, the future, obviously was the one to accept the call against Shavkat. Kind of late replacement, not kind of, right? He's 15-0, 7 wins by way of knockout, 1 submission win, and 7 decisions. Obviously, coming off of the very weird, controversial, unanimous decision win against Michael Venom Page. Many people believe MVP should have got the nod, and even if he didn't deserve the nod, people just were making fun of Gary because he was wrestling with MVP. It's just like, yeah, it's MMA. Why the hell are you going to be striking with someone that's out-striking you? You might as well take him to the ground. Well, what kind of thing is that? But he is also coming off of the D-Rod fight, Daniel Rodriguez, first round stoppage win, Neil Magny, unanimous decision, dominant win, and Jeff Neal, split decision win. Overall, I think it might have been unanimous. I actually forgot who I had in that fight. I think it might have been Neal. I don't know, but it was a somewhat close fight, right? But they do have common opponents, which we'll talk about later. Shavkat, aka Nomad, is arguably the most avoided fighter in welterweight. Besides Ian Gary wanting to fight him and also Belal Muhammad, but it's whatever. 18-0, 8 wins by way of knockout, 10 submission wins, has gone decisions 0 times. This man has stopped every person he has faced in 18 fights. He is arguably the most dangerous fighter. He can knock you out and he can submit you. Unfortunately, he is coming off of the submission win against the 40-year-old Stephen Thompson. But that's besides the point. Obviously, considering that he stopped everyone, the common opponents, he stopped Neil Magny via submission and Jeff Neal by submission. But overall, people like to say they're basically around the same in terms of resume. Especially the last 3 fights. You would even the last 4 fights, you would actually favor Ian Gary. He's faced the same people as Shavkat. The difference is Shavkat fought Wonder Boy and Gary fought MVP. No offense to Wonder Boy, but I feel like he was a little bit worse than MVP in terms of times in their career right now, right? But people like to say, oh, but Ian Gary went decision with these guys. Like, yeah, that's how it works. He can't stop them. That doesn't mean he didn't have good wins against them. Like, what? He couldn't stop him. Yeah, that's Shavkat's whole thing. It's being a stoppage artist, Of course, he's going to win by stoppage. Ian Gary's more of a technical pinpoint striker, obviously winning by decision. But at the end of the day, I do believe this is a 5-round. I think it is because it's a #1 contenders fight, right? 5-round fight. I'm picking Ian Gary. Shavkat was struggling against Jeff Neal's striking. He took a little bit to take down the 40-year-old Wonder Boy. And overall record, he's not that far off in terms of resume compared to Shavkat. Shavkat may have stopped all these guys, but at the end of the day, Ian Gary's not that far off in terms of resume. If not better, especially more recently. But the one thing that Shavkat has more is simple. His submission game is just better. Meaning, hey, when in doubt, shoot a takedown, right? It didn't rhyme, right? It wasn't supposed to rhyme, by the way. But Ian Gary, I do think his calf kick is going to play a humongous role in this fight. I think he's going to be able to nullify Shavkat's really explosiveness with the calf kicks. Not only that, Ian Gary is more than willing to fight a boring fight if it means a #1 contender spot. People are going to say, oh, it's going to be he fights in a boring way. He only fights that way when it's like super good guys like MVP. Like, why the hell would he get knocked out when he could go for the win? That's stupid, right? Same thing with Shavkat. He's gonna be on the back foot. He's gonna be moving. He's gonna be using his footwork, his long range striking attacks, and avoiding Shavkat's clinches, and overall get himself a unanimous decision win. Overall, probably 4 rounds to 1. Let's be honest. But anyways, the main event. Now, of course, the main event of the evening is, of course, Alexandre Pantoja, the Cannibal, will be defending his UFC Flyweight World Championship against Kai Asakura. Now, of course, Asakura is 21-4, 13 wins by way of knockout, 3 submission wins, and 5 decisions. He has 3 losses by way of knockout and 1 loss by way of decision. Now, of course, his latest loss was the one decision loss against Hiromasa back in Ryzen, right? And also he was the former Ryzen championship. Not to mention, he lost to a very special someone. You may be wondering, who is this special someone? It's Manel Cape. He lost to him via knockout in the second round. But he did beat him before, but that was by split decision, so that's not really much better for the most part. So he has been cracked a bunch of times, but of course the main strength people like to talk about is, well, his strength, right? Seems to have power. Even though he has a 60% knockout ratio, he can hurt you. But unfortunately, he's taking on Alexandre the Pantoja, the Cannibal. Arguably, people say he has arguably the best chin in the UFC currently, especially after Max Holloway's chin got cracked. Unfortunate. But Pantoja is 28-5, 8 wins by way of knockout, 10 submission wins, and 10 decisions. Obviously, a very well-rounded opponent. 5 losses, all by way of decision. The last time he lost was to Askarov back in 2020, so quite a bit of time. And of course, that guy hasn't fought in a year, but he's only lost once. He was undefeated. He only lost once, and that was to Kai Kara France. And he had a draw with Brandon Moreno. So once again, not that bad of a loss, right? And then you look at his other loss. He lost to although not the champion at the time, but the former flyweight world champion, Davison Figueiredo, the God of War. He survived his power. Of course, he did get dropped, so obviously that's something. But for the most part, his chin has been tested. But of course, we all know Holloway's chin's been tested numerous times, but unfortunately he got cracked. So this could be similar. People were expecting that anyways. But one thing that people are talking about this fight is that they want Asakura to win, right? The company and, well, the people for the most part. Because Pantoja, for some reason, gets slapped the label of boring. Because he is more of a grappling artist, right? Don't get me wrong, he has a good set of submission wins. But the last time he got a submission was back in 2022. So obviously it's been quite a bit of time since he got it. But at the same time, the competition has been getting better. So obviously he won't be able to stop the same people, right? Speaking of the people, he has faced 8 out of the 10 top 10 flyweights, and he has winning records against all of them. Now, here's the thing. The reason why they want Pantoja to lose is, once again, he's seen as boring, but Asakura would open up a humongous market for the UFC. Of course, the UFC seems to be struggling in the Asian market, obviously with one championship and obviously Ryzen being there. So maybe with Asakura being a champion, they could market there, get more people, obviously. Especially because there is another Japanese fighter, obviously the one that Royval beat in a somewhat close fight, which of course they could easily bring him up to a title shot, that being Tatsuro Taira. So obviously all Japanese title fight. People would pay to see that, right? But besides that, that's the thing. But what's good for Pantoja is if he were to beat Asakura, he would make it would make him very much deserving of a title shot in the next division. Basically, only 2 fighters out of the top 10 he has not faced, and he's beaten everyone else. Don't get me wrong, he didn't defend it against everyone else, but besides that, there's really nothing new for Pantoja to fight if he beats Asakura, right? So obviously we could see a Pantoja versus Merab versus O'Malley winner, or Merab versus Nurmagomedov winner. But at the end of the day, enough talking about what might happen in the future and all that stuff. Who's going to win? Me personally, I think it's going to be Pantoja. People are picking Asakura, but they're kind of only picking him because of oh wow, he's getting an immediate title shot, all that stuff, right? But it seems like most people are also starting to lean towards Pantoja now, right? That's because Pantoja is a good grappler, right? Even if he can't submit you, he is more than experienced enough to keep you on the floor, right? And Asakura with only 3 submission wins. Now, of course, that doesn't mean he's not a good grappler. Of course, Piotr Jan obviously doesn't have that much submission wins, but he's a good grappler for the most part, especially defensive. But the thing is, one thing is, Asakura will lose a lot of the things that he does in Ryzen. Obviously, UFC and Ryzen have different rules, which means it prevents Asakura from doing certain things. So obviously, that would be a little bit bad for him. Obviously, he would lose some of his tools. But his stand-up game obviously is somewhat better than Pantoja. Obviously, Pantoja, although with the great chin, does get touched up a lot. But then again, it's also MMA. Every single time you see a fight with MMA and they show the striking stats, everyone has a 40% connect ratio for the most part. It's so obviously everyone gets hit a bunch in stand-up, right? But people believe Asakura can clip Pantoja. The thing is, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Unless he gets him into equilibrium shot, puts him on wobble bobble streak for the most part. He's not gonna stop Pantoja. He could hurt him at the same time. Pantoja, he's just gonna go for a double. Like, he does not matter to him. He would go for the scramble. He would take you to the floor the second you hurt him, right? And I don't think Asakura has that one punch and knockout thing, because when in doubt, shoot for a takedown. Simple as that. Pantoja is much more experienced, has fought the better opponents. Now, of course, the one big thing is Asakura lost to Cape, so that is obviously not good, especially because he got stopped, and when he did beat him, it was split decision. Well, Pantoja beat Cape by unanimous decision. So obviously UFC or MMA math does not work all the time. But for the most part, Pantoja has fought the supposedly better opponents. He has beaten the people that has beaten Asakura. He is more well-rounded. Now, of course, Asakura is way better in striking, but that does not matter when it's MMA. It's not just striking. He has submission threats. He is more than durable enough to survive anything Asakura could really throw. Obviously, don't get me wrong, Asakura can still stop him, right? Just because you survive the first 5 losses or first 5 wars you've been in doesn't mean you'll survive the next one, right? But for the most part, Pantoja, he's smart enough, he's durable enough. He seems that he's gotten a newfound fire beneath him. And with a essential shot at the bantamweight world title next fight, or even the second fight, I feel like Pantoja will be fired up. I'm not saying he wasn't fired up before, but he's got a newfound energy, right? He is 34, but whatever, who cares? MMA, older people seem to do well, for the most part, right? Obviously, father time still comes for everyone. But Pantoja probably wins by decision. Well, anyways, that is the end of the video. Leave your opinions down below, and I'll catch you in the next one.